Last night, or tonight when I'm recording this, we saw the first semi-final of the Eurovision Song Contest, and already all kinds of different headlines have emerged. We've seen a couple of major surprises already. A new contender emerged to potentially win the public vote, and finally had the question answered as to whether some of this year's biggest favourites will deliver on their potential. Today, we're going to go through all of it, so don't go anywhere. Before I get into those headlines, last week I told you about Aerolo and how their eSIM plans are making my life much easier here in Vienna. It has been such a lifesaver to be able to use my phone like normal without extortionate roaming fees you get charged for using your phone abroad. As well as that, the internet has been 100% reliable while I've been here. It helps too, you get to keep your original number when using Aerolo eSIMs. Luckily, I can share all of these benefits with you too, because if you install the Aerolo app today, you can use my code ESCGABE to get money off your first eSIM and stay connected anywhere you travel. Prices start from just $3.50, so with my code you can get an eSIM for just over £1. It took me about 60 seconds to download the app and purchase the eSIM that I needed for my trip here. I chose the Austria option on the app and I went for the highest data available because I'm going to be using my phone a lot while I'm here. In total, Aerolo offers coverage in more than 200 destinations, so you're covered pretty much wherever you are. Let me reiterate from last time. With Aerolo, you can get 5G even in the mountains of Bhutan. And with unlimited data options, you'll never need to worry about hitting sudden limits. Make sure you install Aerolo today so you can stay connected anywhere you travel and use my code ESCGABE to get money off your first eSIM. Now let's go to the first headline of the night, and in my opinion, that came from the first song in the show, and that is Moldova. In my opinion, based on what we've seen over the last 48 hours, this has emerged as a contender to potentially challenge to win the televote. This is an emotional one for me and this channel because this is a story we have been following since January when we went to the Moldovan national final. And the way it's blossomed into an amazing performance here is so special. The staging for this is essentially exactly what I wanted it to be. It's raucous, it's fun, but it's also polished and it's accessible. Satoshi and the team with him on stage build a better connection with the camera than almost anybody. And I love that they've taken care to make references to past Eurovision performances. Not least the repeats of Aliona Moon's 2013 mountain dress, with it once again being done by Aliona Moon herself, of course. Everything about this was just so joyful and warm, and it reminded me of how Eurovision is supposed to feel. I'm not ashamed to admit that this made me emotional, and I feel so much pride having seen it come from such an early stage. I can't help but root for this, and while my delusion does not extend as far as thinking it could win the whole contest, because it won't, the signs and the performance are all there for this to challenge right at the very top of the public vote. We've seen some clear indications that the dial is moving here. The first indication honestly came out of the blue, and it was one that none of us expected. After the jury show on Monday night, where half of the points are cast, a huge poll of the audience that night in the arena showed that Moldova was overwhelmingly the audience's favourite. They scored more that night than Greece and Finland combined, who finished second and third, and as of the time of recording, are the first and second favourite to win the entire contest. More on them later, of course. A similarly raucous response from the audience today has made my mind turn to Trenelettel from 2022. Moldova has done this before, where they've shown up to Eurovision in the week, taken everybody completely off guard, and outscored all kinds of big favourites with the public. Can it happen this time? I don't know yet, but I can't help but feel the door has started to open based on this performance. In order to get that televote victory, though, Moldova will have to get past Greece. And that may well prove to be a very tough ask. That's because Achilles has brought all kinds of madness to the stage in a way that the audience on Saturday will surely eat up. There is so much to like about this performance. Let's start with what we already knew. The song is catchy as hell, it's fun, and it's accessible. Achilles is a charismatic performer, and that charisma really translates through onto the screen. That much was already known, and it would have taken something very strange for that not to be present in this performance. That said, we did have one big question mark coming into Eurovision. That was over the staging. Just like Moldova, in my view, Greece has showed up and delivered. The clip we saw after rehearsals gave away very little. We saw no props on stage, and Achilles was holding back vocally. That caused some consternation and concern among fans, who maybe wondered just for a second whether the opportunity was being missed here. It turns out there wasn't that much need to worry whatsoever. This was the staging equivalent of throwing the kitchen sink. From the kaleidoscope through to the scooter, which probably wins wins my award for peak silliness, to the rooms with different characters in, with Achilles dancing in each one of them. The bridge did hit in the way I would have hoped to as well, with his vocals being nicely locked in, and the loss of the sunglasses proving to be an effective device to convey the emotion of this. There's been question marks over whether this can win the contest outright. I don't think many people would question that this really can get right up to the top with the public, but the worry was that the jury ceiling would maybe be a little too low. To be honest, at present, my worries are receding a little. My basic assumption would be that this would need to get 300 in the public and 150 in the jury to be in with a good chance of getting over the line. And to be honest, based on what we've seen in the last 2 nights, I feel satisfied to say that that is very possible. Of course, there are other challenges that will need to be fought to get there. It may be that some people feel the staging is too much and it turns them off. Overall, though, I feel like the block of voters is large enough here that we'll be able to skirt around that. There are, of course, challenges coming from other countries too. More on that in a minute. Before we get to that, we do need to talk about the 2, shock qualifiers. In one case, it's a song that this week I'm not surprised about, but before I would have been. The second one was a bit of a bolt from the blue, but it does make sense, so we're going to give that artist their flowers too. First though, time for a big apology from me to Alicia from Poland. I had completely ruled her out before the contest, but she deservedly went to the final. I've made no secret of the fact that this song isn't for me. Nothing is really going to change that. But I can only stand up and applaud the pair of essentially perfect performances that Alicia gave, both to the juries and then to the public, which made sure of this qualification. I had very little doubt going into tonight's show. If you're a big hitter, you can afford to have some slack in the semi-finals and not worry too much. If you're in a position like Poland, where you arrive with a point to prove, you don't have that luxury. You have to really deliver on semi-final night as a result. Poland absolutely did. The staging for this was pretty simple, but it fit the song just right. Starting with Alicia alone on stage before transitioning through to a slanted platform with 4 dancers. After a national final performance where the choreo massively distracted from her and felt muddled and confusing, what we saw in this semi-final was the opposite. The dancers felt like they complemented Alicia, and she was very clearly leading them rather than competing with them for attention. All of this laid the groundwork, but nothing would have been possible without Alicia delivering vocally to the highest level. And honestly, I think she might have been the very best of the night in this respect. She was flawless and utterly without nerves for the duration of the performance. And I didn't feel like we got a single wobble at all. It's one thing to hit the notes, but it's another thing to look so authoritative and in control when you do it. I think this probably qualified with both the public and the juries, but I think in particular, the jury performance must have been really strong for this. I have also seen 1 or 2 people, not many, but enough, saying that there could be a diaspora factor here. I have to defend Alicia on this point and say that this performance was clearly good enough to get into the final on its own merits, and it would have done so no matter what country had sent it. All in all, consider this my official apology. I was wrong to rule this out, and this was a really good surprise this week. My personal opinion is that it isn't to my taste, but my opinion when it comes to the contest is that it clearly did enough to get through, and Pols should be very proud of this. That said, I'm not letting the broadcaster off yet. You have to fix that national final. While we're giving flowers to surprising qualifiers, let's take a moment for Belgium. Isila has had a really difficult Eurovision season, starting with a performance on The Voice Belgium that was widely panned. Even Isila herself said, and I'm quoting her here, that she sounded like a fucking dead cow. Since then, she's been in a constant battle against the narrative that this was a dead on arrival kind of song. But she has been quietly improving, quietly getting the vocals better each time she has performed, and it really paid off. I said in my streams this week that the key thing would be getting this vocal perfect on the night, because that's the area which she needed to maximize in order to gather enough points to get through. That in turn would offset the fact that the choreo for this is still a little static, and while she does some moving around, it's clear that they needed to keep her on the spot when it came to the dancing. In addition, there was the question over whether Europe would connect with the song, and to be honest, my assessment in advance was that it probably wouldn't. Fortunately though, the stars did align. She locked in when it mattered, she delivered her best vocal performances just like Alicia last night and tonight, and people connected with the song enough to get it through. It did have a bit of a kind of fresh glass of water feel in amongst some more challenging other efforts. What I will say that is particularly impressive is that tonight she did have technical issues on stage. She wears a cape at the start of this performance, and the removal of it did not go to plan. I did feel that there was maybe a little nerves and a little shakiness that was induced by this, but rather than letting it derail the whole performance, performance, which is something we've seen happen in the past, her confidence instead grew, and by the end you'd completely forgotten that there was ever a problem. Much like Poland, this shows the value of locking in at exactly the right time and delivering a song to its maximum potential. And you can't say that Belgium doesn't deserve this after the last 2 years they've had. Before we talk about the favourite to win the contest and whether they delivered, we also need to talk about the quality of the production and the writing of this show, or rather the lack thereof. It's bad. Really bad. Austria might not be boycotting the contest, but it seems that all of their producers and scriptwriters are. The one exemption to this disaster was the really nice opening act documenting Eurovision through the years from the perspective of a man who has grown up with it, which was really quite emotional. Other than that, to be honest, I think this is one of the worst written contests of the modern era. The excessively long Eurovision quiz as an interval act made me feel like my time was being wasted. The hosts are wooden and robotic and unsympathetic, and that's all before the worst offender, the Austria versus Australia interval act. I don't know who thought this was a good idea, but it was cringe after cringe, before it ultimately descended into full-on horror. We need to talk about the kangaroo. Why was it so uncanny lifelike? Why did it have the ability to blink? Why did it start twerking? Very clearly, it has been tough to get interval acts to sign up for this year, and given the current toxicity of the Eurovision brand, that's not very surprising. But I watched this with my head in my hands. It was genuinely difficult and embarrassing, and I would have rather just had a 10-minute ad break. There's also the small matter of the postcards, which consisted of random shots of different things in Vienna, with the artists green screened in as if they were some kind of holographic giants attacking the city. It's barely better than Turin in 2022, and those are a notorious disaster. Maybe we've been spoiled in recent years, but they flew all the artists to Vienna a month ago to do this. What an absolute waste. With that rant out the way, it's time to close the video by talking about the still favourite Finland. Before this show, they were the favourites to win Eurovision, and I was very much of the same opinion. I got a little bit shaken in my belief last night during the jury show, though I should say that others, including my fiancé, said this was just me overthinking things. I'm glad to report that today I feel much calmer. We mostly knew what to expect going into this performance tonight. It was always going to be very similar to the national selection. For that reason, we knew broadly what we were getting. But there were questions over how crisp the shots would be, how the violin would sound now that it's being played live, and how Peter Parkkonen's vocals would be. On the first aspect, this is a faithful and, in my opinion, improved translation of the performance at UMK. The changes are minor, and the details that have been changed are only very small. But all of those changes come together to make it feel more deliberate and more polished. In particular, some of the criticism I had about some moments feeling like we were just waiting for the next thing to happen seemed to have been addressed. The biggest moment in this case was just before the dramatic finale, when we look at the empty confessional booth, which just felt more deliberate in this setting than it did before. Second is the violin, and you can really tell it is live. This was a big unknown before tonight, but to be honest, I think it's really exciting. I'm pretty confident at the moment that this is going to be a net positive for the song's chances. And I think it does a lot towards not only making Linda feel like an equal partner to Petter, but probably the dominant voice and presence within the performance, as she should be. This is a song about a broken relationship and literally ends with Petter despairing at her feet. The storyline is enhanced, in my opinion, by it feeling like it's being dictated on her terms and he's simply being pulled along. The final thing then is the vocal, which in my opinion has never been as problematic as others have suggested, but at the same time it has varied from performance to performance. It feels though like Petter is hitting his stride at exactly the right moment. The early parts of this in particular were the cleanest he has sounded, and it felt and sounded so much more controlled than it did in the past. This song needs him to deliver, it needs him to sell it, and that is exactly what he did tonight. Every performance since he has arrived in Vienna has been better than the last, and if that trend continues, then Finland could be in imperious form come Saturday night. All of this comes together then to give a clear picture of where Finland stands in the picture of Eurovision 2026. They are still favourites, and for me, I feel more assured in this answer than at any point since I arrived in Vienna. It's not overwhelming for sure, and I don't see a massive landslide coming. Others could still challenge and could still take this away. But for now, Linda and Petter have laid down a gauntlet that will be very difficult to beat. It's on everyone else now to step up and force another outcome. Before we end the video, we should recognise that almost all of our qualifiers tonight were richly deserved. In addition to those already mentioned, Lithuania came through, as did Croatia, Serbia and Sweden. The reason I haven't focused on them here is because all of them were expected to qualify and they delivered broadly as expected. 9 of the 10 qualifiers then deserved to be in this final. Israel, meanwhile, doesn't deserve to be in the contest at all. With that, semi-final 1 is a wrap, and semi-final 2 is on the way. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because we will be following everything live on this channel. We are live streaming every day of this week. For now, though, thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon.